everybody, and welcome to the Sapan Film Club's pilot screening, which is Bani Singh's film called Taangh. And this is something we're very excited about. Sapan is a peace collective of individuals and organizations from across South Asia and the diaspora. And we are working towards peace in the region. We're asking for soft borders, visas on arrival, so that people can meet each other. And we're trying to create an atmosphere where there can be more collaboration and less hate. So that's what we're trying to do. We've been at it for almost 2 years now. We've been conducting meetings every month on these kind of Zoom webinars where we have people from different kinds of fields and activists and journalists and writers and scholars from different subjects who collaborate. We come together, we talk about the issues that we all face in South Asia. And that's what Sapan has been doing. We're advocating for human rights. We're advocating for peace in the region, for more collaboration, and to generally learn from each other and to, be allowed to at least meet each other, if nothing else. So that's what Sapan does. And this is the first time that we decided to launch a film club in which we will be curating a film that is related to a topic about South Asia or, specifically the subcontinent. Well, it is more about South Asia, but at the moment we are starting with a film that covers the topic of partition. So that's the first film that we've started with. And the idea is that we're going to have a film screening every 2 months. This time we've started with an Indian filmmaker. The next time we'll go with somebody maybe from Pakistan or Bangladesh, and so on. And we're also hoping to make it into to start a book club in the alternate months. So that's what the plan is. So Bani happens to be a member of Sapan, and when we heard that she's a filmmaker and she's made this film, we signed up to watch it. And I personally was very, very moved to see this film. And so that was like my first nomination for the first, pilot screening. And she very graciously has, given us the thing for free. And so our members could watch it today. Today, we are going to have a conversation with Bani. Any of you wants to ask her questions about her process and you want to share your feedback about the film, you can please do so. There are just a couple of rules. So please keep yourselves on mute so that we don't have too much disturbance. And please raise your hand before you speak. So I will call you up to speak in the order of your hands going up. And before you ask your question, please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and what you do. And in fact, you can also leave those introductions in the chat so that we can, when we do a report about the event, we can put them down as well. So welcome to Bani for being here at our pilot screening. And Bani Singh is a space designer who, she was brought up in Delhi, and she did her master's in space design from National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad. And then for the last 20 years, she's been living in Bangalore. She has a young daughter. And this film was not supposed to be a film. It started out as her trying to understand her father's, his experiences, his memories, and to make a record of his, his time as a champion hockey player. And he got, he had a stroke when he was 84. And it was very difficult for her to communicate with him. But that's when she thought that this is the most important point, to communicate with him. And so she and her brother, went on this project to sort of try and understand, what he went through during those years of partition. He was part of the team that won the Olympic gold for India in 1948. And though she'd heard a lot about it, she'd heard a lot about partition as well. But in the process of doing this film shoot, which was not a film shoot, which was more of a recording of memories, she realized that there was so much more there. Like there was a story on hockey, there was a story on partition, there was a story about how they reconstructed their lives after moving to India. So she took over two of those main themes, which was hockey and bringing the friends together and who hadn't been able to see each other after partition. And then gradually all these, candid shots that she'd taken, it came together as a movie. This year it's finally released, though it was shot, I think, almost eight years ago.
Yeah, 2014.
Yeah, 2014. And so it's taken that long in the production because they were all candid shots and, it was raw footage. So it's been very difficult to kind of put everything together in a very cohesive kind of a, form and have that proper chronology to it. So yeah, so that's about Bani, and I'm sure all of you here have seen the film, and you'll have something to ask her. But I get to go first. So so my first question is, I was very excited to see the visuals of Lahore, and to me, because my ancestors are also from Lahore, and I felt like those parts of the film, to me, it almost felt like an ode to Lahore. You were capturing the sounds and the moods and the people on the streets and looking out from the auto, and it was like really capturing it from the ground, like letting all of us see, that look, this is what Lahore is. So how is it to shoot there, and how did you like, how are your interactions with the people, and what was the experience like those 6 days that you had in Lahore?
So actually, for one, I felt very at home when I went to Lahore. I mean, as soon as I landed, and I mean, I was received by someone, and his first question was, "Tusi Punjabi bol de ho na?" So I said yes. So, and then the very first evening, he took us out to the Lahore food street, and I felt extremely at home. I kind of blended in with the crowd, and in some ways, I had heard of Lahore from my father, especially, with a lot of love and affection. So there was a sense of actually being able to go into a space that I had not ever imagined I would be able to go to. So it was a very precious experience. And I think the minute people realized I was from India, I was actually astounded by how much warmth and hospitality was shown to me. And this sort of desire of, oh, wish more people could come and wish we could go across the border. So the name Taangh for the film, which means longing, actually, that word came up again and again in my conversations with people in Lahore. They would say, जिस तरह तुसी अपने बुजुर्गां दी ज़मीन वेखन आए हो, like you've come to see the land of your ancestors. We also have a desire to go across the border. Sanu vi badi taang hai. We also have a lot of longing to do that. So, I mean, in that sense, I mean, there was vocabulary that I had heard as a child, but I think I understood its meaning when I was in Lahore. Words like ishq, junoon, taang, they take on a very different life when you're in Lahore. It's as if it's come out of us mitti tu, it's come from that land. So these were very exciting. And I mean, in retrospect, I'm saying that, but there was a sense of, there was a live connection to something that I had heard of. So that was very powerful for me.
You mentioned this incident to me when you met a person on the street who came up to you very aggressively,
Yes.
and he questioned you, and then you spoke to him. And so tell us about that.
So what had happened was that actually I was looking for my father's friend Shahrukh, but I had no guarantee that I would find him. So what I mean, the advice I had been given and what I was doing instinctively was I was recording everything, because I said, even if I'm not able to find him, the film will be about the search. So I was moving around with a camera, and I mean, I realize now in hindsight that maybe it was a little unusual in Lahore that, that I was shooting so much with the camera, because I did feel that there was a sense of, I think the fear of being spied upon. So they were, so I was in a park actually, and I was photographing some birds. So my camera had been pointed to the sky, and I was panning across it, and I was sitting in a relaxed way. And then this gentleman who was dressed in very traditional clothes, he came up to me, and he seemed like a very orthodox Muslim. And he said, कि आपने हमारे घर की तस्वीर खींची है. तो, and he was not happy about it at all. So I said, no, I mean, it hadn't even occurred to me that there were some homes there. I said, नहीं, मैं वो परिंदों की film ले रही थी. So he was very aggressive, and he felt I was spying on behalf of someone. And he said, नहीं, आपने ली है और आप अपना camera दीजिए. So I kind of realized that I can't kind of fudge around this. I have to tell him the truth. I can't say नहीं, nothing more. I said, नहीं, मैं हिंदुस्तान से हूँ और मैं अपने वालिद साहिब के बचपन के बारे में कुछ जानना चाहती थी, इसलिए मैं आई हूँ. And he just melted. I mean, his response was, I mean, he's immediate. He changed his tone of speaking with me, and he said, I'm so glad you've come, और आप जैसे लोगों को और आना चाहिए तभी तो. And it was a very surprising encounter for me. I had not expected him to be so generous and hospitable, after being so angry. So that was, of course, and he immediately, from being aggressive, he started saying, how can I help you? Tell me if I can help you in some way, because what you're wanting to do is what should be done. That was I was too scared at that point, to be quite honest, to have any more conversations, because in some ways I did not have permission to shoot. And if someone, मतलब कोई लकीर का फकीर बनना चाहता था, तो I could have been in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So I disappeared as fast as I could, but it was quite surprising.
Yeah. And your film is, these days, it's being shown at the Dharamshala Film Festival. So how has the reaction been? I mean, your film has all this raw footage, which is totally unrehearsed, and you can hear, very, it's like so authentic. And then it's up against all these other films that have such polished cutting and everything, So how has the experience been of showing your film there?
So, actually, I did speak about this. I said, it's an interesting thing. You see, documentaries are very valuable for recording memories and even telling the story of nations and communities. They are like the albums of our community and the albums of our nation. And for me, as a filmmaker, it's very important to record it in an authentic way. But currently, the line between fiction and non-fiction is blurring. So there are a lot of techniques which belong to the world of fiction, which are now part of documentary. And what I mean by that is that you have very, very big budgets, and you have very sophisticated cinematographers, and the production budgets are enormous. So compared to that, my film has a negligible production budget. And in Dharamshala, the film, there were 5 feature films. Feature documentaries, and 3 of them were, 2 had won the best documentary award in Cannes. 1 had been nominated for the Oscars this year, Writing with Fire. And there was 1 more film, and mine. So sometimes I felt a little shy, because my film almost started like a record that I was going to make for my family. So you could say a home video production. But when I started doing the story, I realized that this was a very important story. So I did reach out to a crew, because especially when I went to Calcutta, that I had some backup, and I was taking some decisions of putting the daughter in front of the camera as well, which is myself, because I had understood by then that it was becoming a partition story. But I did not want it to be a story that was an old story. I wanted it to be a story that was contemporary. And, because I worked on the Khalsa Museum project, and I understand the history of the land of Punjab to some extent, I understood that this was a very rare opportunity to tell a story in a different way. So at that point, I was, to the best of my capabilities, trying to record it well. But to be honest, I had thought that I would make a proposal and then get a professional crew on board and make the film, like with a big budget and all. So I was doing the research for that crew to actually come on board. But I was also aware of the fact that my protagonists were all in their 80s, and they were all, sort of light of their life.
Yeah.
So there was an urgency to it. There was no time for somebody to look at my proposal and approve of it and then say, okay, come back to us after 3 months. And because when I was even doing the research, there were instances when I would call up asking to speak to someone who had perhaps known my father in college, and they would say, "Arey, पिछले महीने तक थे, मगर अब जा चुके हैं." I actually had that experience. So I knew that time was running out, and actually I was right about that, because I had not realized that it was the last year of my father's life that I had begun the film, and then the footage I had was the only footage we had, and then the film had to be made,
and Shah Rukh as well. He also passed away just after that.
He passed. Shah Rukh passed away about 9 months or 8 months after my father, and Keshav Dutt was here till last year.
He saw the film?
He saw the film, yes. He saw the film.
Great. And actually,
saw a lot of footage. So for him, I think he was very moved by the fact that, what was his passion and what was so valuable to him was clearly very valuable to me. I mean, that got demonstrated to him through the act of recording it. He was quite surprised at my tenacity and persistence because it wasn't, so many times I was just jumping, jumping off the bus, running and not knowing what I'm doing. But that's why you find the film very organic, because it's been filmed in a very intuitive way.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily plan a shot. So the editing was very challenging because the film had not been shot to a script. The film had just been shot. There was about 64 hours of footage.
Okay.
And there was a story in my head, which I saw in layers. And then I would translate it to the editor. And they would say, look, the thing is that now all we have is the footage. And what you're saying is sometimes not evident. So then I did a little bit more footage. I got archival footage. I worked very, very hard on my voiceovers to stitch that story together. And Obro Banerjee is a brilliant, brilliant editor. Because he's made the story look like it was shot for the story, but that was not the way it was. That's why it took us pretty long to kind of, make it happen.
No, but considering considering these the challenges and these constraints and this lack of script, I mean, the fact that Taangh has already won awards, it's got the award for Best Documentary at the 2022 New York Indian Film Festival and Best Film at Film South Asia 2022 Kathmandu. And from tomorrow, it's going to be screened at the IFFI Film Festival in Goa. So this is a big achievement. But tell me, what is the feedback that you've got so far that is the most precious to you?
So I think, almost unanimously, the crowd, the audience response has been, for me as a filmmaker, my reward is that Q&A at the end of the film. Because you see, now we are also in a day of, time of online and people watching films on laptops and on their mobile phones. Now, what you miss out when you do that is that you don't watch a story in a group. You watch it alone again, right? So you have that experience alone. And then later when you talk about the film to somebody, you're actually translating whether you were moved or not moved. Because also if you cut up a film and you watch 20 minutes and then you come back after 2 days and watch the next 15 minutes, actually it's been cut up quite bad, the story. So the impact can never be the same. But when we watch it in an auditorium, for that, 90 minutes, we become a community because we hear the story being told in space and time at the same speed. And we are moved. And we laugh and we clap and we cheer together. So by the end of the film, there is the 2 plus 2 is not 4. 2 plus 2 has become something else. And the audience it's a transformed audience at the end of the film because they go through somebody's life, right? They go through an experience like we've all had buddies in college. We've all had those close friendships. And then to feel that sort of a friendship is what was broken. And that is what Partition was. That hurts. So, for me, the delight of seeing how audiences have rejoiced with Shah Rukh in India. They've clapped and they've cheered and they've been moved to tears by him.
Yeah.
So that's very heartening,
In fact, I watched the film for a second time with my family, my husband and my mother-in-law. And after watching the movie, and since my husband and his family are from Kerala, they have not been personally sort of gone through this experience that people who of the partition generation, possibly would have experienced. Like for instance, my family was from Lahore, so we have these stories in the family, right? So my mother-in-law, after watching the film, she just, I told her I'm going for this meeting with you. And she just she had this very moved look on her face. And she said, what are these walls? It's just a 50-minute plane ride. And what are these walls? How do we explain this? That doesn't make any sense. How do we explain this? So like she also was seeing this in a new light, that we've had this 75 years of walls between the two people who are the same people, they have the same language, they have the same customs, they have the same value systems, the same everything, like all the way that we talk, the way that we look, everything is the same. So it just doesn't make sense. Like, how do you explain this to somebody that, okay, somebody decided that we're not going to talk to each other and we're not going to see each other, and your children also can never speak to each other, and they can never have any communication. So I think this film really brings out the whole nonsensical concept of completely closing down borders and not being able to meet people who are your best friends. Imagine not being able to meet your
Yeah.
best friend,
Yeah.
for your whole life. Like it's so strange, and you explained it so well in the end that it is their watan, and they have to
Yeah.
start all over again in another country for the sake of the nation. So what's
Yeah.
the difference between the land and the nation? So there is a difference.
Yeah.
And the way you've said it in the end, it really strikes you. And you also told me that your father was in the Navy, and he was part of the Navy that went to war with Pakistan,
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, tell
What
us
a
a little
choice. I
about
mean,
that.
these are such unfair choices
Yeah.
to make people make for the sake of a concept, the concept of nationality, right?
Mm.
And they never spoke about it, right? I mean, because you believe in an idea. So, Malab, this is the reason I feel I never heard of Shah Rukh. I mean, because possibly there were parts that hurt and parts that you had to forget. I don't quite know why, but all I can say is that for me, the drive to do this film was, maybe there was a part of me that knew that I don't have the full picture about my parents.
Mm.
I mean, after all, they had rebuilt their lives, they had rebuilt their identities. And there was a part of their identity that they were silent about, right? But I remember in my childhood, my parents watching with such rapt attention the Pakistani plays that used to come. Us waqt pirated aate the, and they used to, get these videos, and then they used to watch, and they were hungry for the language. They were hungry
Mm.
for their Punjabi. And then they would say West Punjabi, Punjabi kinni mithi hai. And
Mm.
I couldn't understand any of this. It was like, yeah, what's the fuss about, right? Because, so I mean, at a level, we heard so much about this independence that was won against the colonial masters, right?
Mm.
So, I mean, na lena na dena, but when I was young, I could get quite aggressive with the British, before Pakistan. Yes, it's I mean, at a personal level, everybody says, but we were wired like that. But
Yeah.
nobody really spoke of the fact that, okay, there was so much love here. Okay, let's talk about this. What was done to these people? What choices they were forced to make? So, I mean, there's so much pain over there, so much pain that has
Yeah.
not been talked about, so much pain that has been covered up. It's all, I mean, in a way, it's like, but my mother she was a very unusual woman, because I remember, so you see, in India, I don't know about Pakistan, but in India, partition was not really acknowledged till the 50th year. Uh, it was, all we spoke about was a non-violent independence movement of India. That's what I was taught in my
Mm.
history books. And my mother was rebuilding her life. I mean, in many ways, she is a positive outcome of the partition, because, as I say in the film, that she actually became a very independent woman because she had to go earn and she had to start working. So she was rebuilding her life, and families used to be gathered in the few places where people had settled. So my father had a job, my mother had a job. So the doors were always open. It was langar, 24 hours. People could walk in, and they were all supporting each other as a community. So my mother was working, and she would come back and she would be tired, and I wanted to do my homework. And she was like, okay, you sit over there and you read out your lesson, and I will try to help you. She's multitasking like many people do. So I started reading out about how India is the first country that won its freedom in a non-violent freedom struggle. And she said, stop right there. And she said, who said so? I said, my history book, I'm preparing for this lesson. And she just took my book and chucked it across the room. And she said, I will not teach you this lesson.
Mm.
She said, Punjab and Bengal were washed in blood for the birth of this nation.
Mm.
She was upset, she was angry, she was emotional. And as a child, I could not understand what this reaction was. And you
Mm.
just feel like you brought on something, you've upset your mother. So I just picked my book and kind of disappeared. But it's an experience I never forgot, right? That there was something
Mm.
that my history book was saying, which was not quite true,
Mm.
which is the story that's gone missing. I mean, that's the lesson I learned. And perhaps this film is actually an ode to that. It's like, what went missing in our history books? What is it that we were not told?
Mm.
You know? So it's experiences. I feel this film, I mean, though it's a very personal story for me, because it's not just the personal story of my parents and the protagonists who are in, the hockey team and what was behind the 1948 Olympics, but it's also a personal story because I am a post-partition child. I'm the next generation, and I inherited that legacy and that silence. And I have questions that I could never ask, and I have to figure out those answers myself, because a lot of the narratives have been submerged, but the footprints are there, and I am an optimist, and I feel if you go looking for it, you'll find it. And at the end of the film, I felt I understood my parents better. I understood that generation better. I understood matlab ke, I mean, the amazingly difficult circumstances out of which they have rebuilt their lives.
Yeah.
And most importantly for my parents, especially when I encounter some of the narratives of hate today, that generation went through the worst kind of trauma. They did not have hatred in their hearts. They rebuilt themselves with love. That's what they gave me. They did not give me hatred. And that is commendable. And I think we can only move forward like that.
And you dedicated the movie, in the end, you've written to Punjab and Bengal on both sides. Yeah.
Yes, on both sides of the border. Because, I mean, my endeavor, and I think, I was aware of the fact that when I was entering an area like the Partition, I was entering an area that there were a lot of wounds in. And, why would you go there? And why would you? I mean, it was very disturbing for Keshav and my father to go back there. I mean, I know they were sharing something. I have no idea. It's a difficult space to go into. As a child, I knew that you don't enter here, you don't trespass here. So why would you go there? Why would you want to rake up those wounds again, if not for healing? I feel it's I don't know what to say when people go to these wounds and use these wounds to kind of, get some advantage out of it. It is so
political advantage.
It's uncivilized,
Yeah. So I don't want to hog you completely. So if anybody else wants to ask any questions, please raise your hand, and I'll spotlight you in the order of your hand raising. And please introduce yourselves and where you're from and what you do, and then I'll hand over the mic to you. Anybody wants to ask anything or give your feedback on the film? Yeah, Neel Kamal is first, so I'll spotlight him now. Neel Kamal, please put on your camera. I can't spotlight you otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
First of all, kudos to Bani Singh ji for such a marvelous movie. Actually, every time he just saw his father and his companions, I had to shed tears. I couldn't control those tears. There was immortally. So, don't have the words to describe how the movie was, how it could have been filmed, how those guys with the wrinkled faces, they could have been made to speak up, even when at certain places, at certain times, even they couldn't utter some words. You have to read their face value only, what they wanted to say. Really, it's just, I can imagine how it could have been shot. So, as the saying goes, that nostalgia is always painful.
Yes.
I will repeat, the nostalgia is always painful. So, it featured your father, Balveer Singh ji Senior, whom entire nation salutes all the time for his contribution to the hockey, for right from 1948 to 1952 or 56, whatever it is. And the biggest point when I'm a Indian, I'm sitting in India, was Shah Rukh ji. I will say salute to Shah Rukh ji. So when Balveer Singh ji and your father and Shah Rukh are all together, you go and gauge the length of those narrow lanes. That is really superb. So how you got the courage to shot all these things and what is your really experience in shooting all this? Because it's a treasure for India and as well as for Pakistan, for those who are into sports.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your words. All I can say is that, I mean, you'll be very fascinated to know that I had never held up. I mean, I wasn't interested in shooting, even still photography, before this film. So when I used to come with the camera to my father, he used to actually start laughing, because when we used to have family gatherings, I was the last person who would reach out for my camera and get it. But this story had so much power. I can just, all I can tell you is that I felt blessed that it chose me to tell itself. It had a life of its own when I was filming it. And I had this camera, which I used, and I used extensively. And fortunately, my footage was good, because, I had gone to an editor after my father had passed away, and I said, I want to make the film, but if my footage is not good, or my father is coming across as compromised and vulnerable, then I will not make a film for public viewing. But they said, no, the footage is good, and it is very authentic, and it is sophisticated in its authenticity. I think fortunately, because I studied design, a lot of those things, one has got through osmosis, and it's there. Your eye is catching it. But the most fascinating thing is that after this film was completed and my shooting was done, my camera broke, and I have not got another one.
Oh.
And it just stays it. I don't have the urge to pick up a camera and film again. But when this story came to me and I saw the story, I was in such a hurry. I was a possessed person. I would be sleeping with notebooks next to me, trying to write those VOs, trying to express what I felt. And what more can I say? And I think this film has made it to the film festivals that it has, because the story has got the prominent place. Not even cinematography, not technology, not special effects. If you like this film, it's because the story grabs you and it's raw.
Yeah, I think raw is the word. Yeah. We have a question from Deeksha. So I'm going to spotlight Deeksha now. Deeksha, please introduce yourself first.
Hi, Deeksha. Hi.
My name is Deeksha. I live in Delhi. I actually watched this movie at DIF first.
Yes.
And Bani ma'am was so kind to give me a link to this movie to watch again. I was watching it from the point of view of a caretaker of an old person. And so that's why this movie it hit me like a train, like I told her. And when I met her after the screening at DIF, I could barely get any words out of my mouth. I don't know if you remember.
I remember, yeah.
And my face was probably red and my eyes were probably red, and you hugged me, and it just felt so good. And after the movie, I wanted to share the same experience with my family. So I wanted my brother and my parents to watch it. Yeah. And they haven't given me a lot of reactions, to be honest. But yeah. I know that my father is actively trying to not think about what it was a horde of emotions for him, I'm sure, but he's not showing that. He's so quiet about it. And my mom, however, she's hiding right here. She told me that she felt heavy, but again, like while we were watching the movie, none of these people showed any reactions, and I felt like what is this? Like, I'm crying my eyes out, and none of these people have.
Dadu in one of the characters, and my father in one of the characters. And
wow, that's your mom? It doesn't look like your mom. My goodness. You look like sisters.
So mom saw her dad in Keshavdas, and we saw my dad's father in your dad. And like the way you were communicating with him, it just like because towards the end of his life, my grandfather wasn't able to speak either.
Yeah.
And he would get so frustrated if we didn't understand what he was saying.
Yeah, my God, it's so hard. Yeah.
Things that you were saying about,
We could relate so well.
we could relate, we could see him, the way he was waving his hand, the way he was just like,
Yeah.
and then he would be like, can't hear every movement of his, and he was strong. He was so strong, like the physiotherapist would say that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and the way you said, like after your mother passed away, he was ready to, his
Yeah.
bags were packed, he was ready to go. Same, like the year my dadi died, a year after that he was gone as well. Like within months of her descent, he was not able to speak anymore. And so like she died in November. In December it was my brother's birthday, and he tried so hard to keep our spirits up. He dressed up, he put on his cap and suspenders and a coat, and he sat with us and started singing for us. It was so sweet, despite having been completely like lost everything. And this movie was so cathartic for me, and I'm sure it was for
Yes, of course.
these guys as well.
I am unable to express myself.
No, I understand what you're saying, because I think I understood that what happened to my father was his worst nightmare, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, he got the stroke when he was 84, and I'm being honest with you, he was so active that I could not keep up with his routine. And he couldn't believe what had happened to him, and then he couldn't believe that he had survived it. And I think after my mother passed away, I mean, he was just wanting to go, as I say in the film. But you know, that's why I have a feeling that in that kind of emptiness, I realized that this was the only time that his body relaxed. When we would speak of hockey, it would be a bit like, you know, he's forgetting, because it was such a strong passion, right? He's wired with hockey.
Yeah.
And also because my mother was not there, I was entering a very, very intimate space with him, you know, because her absence was very, very huge in his life, you know. And he did allow me to enter his mind. I believe that. And I think there are things I've understood because he allowed that. So they were very, I mean, and the thing is, there was a lot of laughter in our home also. Though it was such a sad, tragic time, there were people who would say that, you know, your father has been such a hero to me that I can't bear to see him like that. So, you know, there weren't so many people who visited, but there were not so many people my father wanted to meet either. You know, you had to show some amount of persistence, because it's when you were with him, you realized he's the same man. He was the boss. He was in control. And you'll be amazed to know that we had fights. We had complex conversations. But even in our fights, I used to have to speak for him. I used to say, oh, so now you're telling me that I should get lost. He would do this with his hand, that no, can you say it? So it was like this kind of solo acting going on, right? I would be speaking for him, I would be speaking for me. And then we used to burst out laughing because it was so hilarious, you know?
Yeah.
And then sometimes when we couldn't understand him, you know, my brother had a way of breaking this very sad moment. Like once I remember we couldn't understand what he wanted to say. And my brother, you know, finally said, oh, I finally got it. You want a girlfriend? And my dad said, no. You know, they said, we want 2 girlfriends. You know, I mean, we just would break into it with some kind of ridiculous comment like that, which would make everybody laugh, you know. But I suppose, but it was sad. I mean, it was very sad what happened to him.
Yeah. I found it like to the T. I found it so relatable.
Yeah.
It felt like I was seeing my grandfather through your footage again, and it felt so good.
Thanks, Deeksha. Yeah.
I have to like commend Obro on the editing. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Like how layered the story was, to be able to lay it down like that is genius. I would say it was beautifully done.
True. Yeah.
Thanks, Deeksha, for sharing. We have another. We stay on. Yeah, we have a question from Sara Arshad.
Hi there. Ma'am Bani, I am Sara from Lahore.
Hello.
And ma'am, I cannot just explain my state of mind this time. I was shared the link by one of my close friends, and after that, watching that, you can't believe that how much I have cried. And your Bapuji and Shahrukh sir was wiping away their tears with the handy, and I was trying to wipe away with my dupatta. And I am literally feverish this time. My whole family is asking, and I'm going to make them bound to watch this landmark. Ma'am, you came to Lahore and you have touched us in so many ways. I just jumped out of my bed and I saw my school lady McLang, and your father was your father was living in the same street where I have spent my childhood. I wish you could have contacted me earlier so I could guided you in a better way and hosted you in the best way I could ever do. मैम आपके फादर ने आपने एक जगह वहां पे कहा आई विल बी बाइलिंगुअल इन दिस
हाँ बोलिए
अब तू शाहरुख सर सेड दैट अब तू वापस जाएगी तो तेरा बापू रोएगा and believe in me, I heard you crying from behind the camera and it was so hard to tackle. We people, we in subcontinent, we have so much common. Even yesterday I was seeing a Photoshop of a shop of mithai, and it was just like we are having in our old street these days. And even you will find it a little bit funny. I have found a little bit resemblance between me and between Miss Aekta Kapoor this time. So,
yeah, you're right. Actually, there is a family resemblance hoega.
Maybe also.
When I came to Lahore and I had to buy tickets to enter the Red Fort, I did not stand in the foreigners line. I stood in the same line. So how did you tell I was not from Lahore? I totally blended in with everyone.
Yeah, ma'am, but I really want to pay my heartfelt gratitude to coming to my city and presenting it in the way, the best ever way you can do. And plus, I could feel every single person's emotion around, moving around the story, even yours, even those flowers in the pond when you received the news that Shahrukh is no more there. And ma'am Salima, after a while, informed you that he is living. And unfortunately, we are divided from each other, and missing friendships have always hung around us. And this is, we just can talk to each other through Zoom and we can send each other greetings. But I just wanted to say a big thank you to you. That is why I'm here. I wanted to say you in person.
No, it means a lot to me that you have been able to see the film and you're in Lahore.
Yeah.
And it's my dream to be able to come with the film to Lahore. And I mean, you know, Lahore was, I can't tell you, with my father, it was in childhood, there would be this experience. So, I mean, just look at the kind of contradictions in the situation that we are at war with Pakistan. My father is in the forces. My father is in the Navy. So, you know, the way children are wired, we would go to school and we would be taught these awful limericks about how, you know, whatever it was. Fortunately, I've forgotten nonsense that, you know, we were taught. And then sometime later, my father would be delighted with something random. And before he can think, the words that will come out of his mouth is, Wah, Lahore banata. And when my father would say, Wah, Lahore banata, we knew he was delighted. So we would be happy because we would know that this is the moment that my father is very happy. And it would not be conscious. It would be just something that would emerge before he maybe could catch it, you know. So then it would be like, okay, you know, and then I'd be in school and people would be asking, okay, where are you from? Where are your parents from? So somebody would say Banaras, somebody would say whatever. And then this little child, you know, 5-year-old child that knows that, okay, now we are at war with Pakistan. Now, can I say Lahore? I can't know. Then I'm a spy. You know what I'm saying? The confusion in a child. Okay, where am I from? Can I say where I'm from? Or do I say I'm from Delhi? But, you know, if I would say, looking so Punjabi, say I'm from Delhi, people would say, no, but where are you really from? Where are you really from?
Yeah.
So how far back do you go? And I know when I came to Lahore, I met so many people, and if I said to them, "Acha, but where are you really from?" They will be from where I am come from.
Yeah.
So my God, it's like, so you just look at it. I mean, I understood it because I'm very interested in psychology. You know? If I could not, if I had not done design, I think I would have done psychology. So I realized while I was making this film, and when I went to Lahore and I saw the women there, I was seeing my grandmothers, right? They all looked like my grandmothers looked. They would speak like very strong women. Yeah, Punjabi women are really strong and beautiful. And I mean, I can see my grandmothers in Iran. I can see my grandmothers in Afghanistan. You know, this whole belt. And I would say, wow, you know, so am I being taught to hate myself? Because if I look in the mirror, what do I see? I see that the land of my ancestors is living through me, right?
Yeah.
It can be located anywhere, but I'm carrying it in me. And I think there are things that science has not caught up with.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, science doesn't know as yet, but we carry that emotional DNA in us.
Yeah.
So it's a very unfair game that's being played at a psychological level. And if we don't catch it, then we are not going to pass on the correct information to our children.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's a question of catching it and saying, okay, no, there's another way of looking at it.
And when you're talking about this sense of, I would say, dual identity, since my family is from, background is also from Lahore, my Taiji, she was lucky enough to go back to Lahore twice in the 90s when the visas were a little bit more relaxed, you know. And the first time she went back to her hometown, to her, the place where her father used to have his shop. And she met the person who was now living there. And she just told them that, you know, this was my father's shop. We used to live right here, Upar and all that. And they said, "Tusi to saadi behan hegi ho." And they were like, "You're our sister." And they completely like took her home, and they were like so full of love. And can you believe it? A few years later, when their son got married, they called her and they said, "You have to come for the wedding, because, you know, how can my son get married without his bua being there, you know, without his aunt being there?" So they actually went back for the wedding. And at the wedding, she sang these typical old Punjabi songs, and everybody was in tears because it was the same songs that they were singing there, and she's singing in Delhi. And you know, interestingly, the last T20 World Cup abhi jo hua hai recently, in the final, it was Pakistan and England, right?
Yes.
So we were at a Barsi for my cousin who passed away, and the match was going on at the background. And so you know, and some actually Rotarian ladies from Lahore Rotary Club were supposed to come to Delhi to her house for lunch, but they couldn't get visa as usual, the usual stupid thing. So only 4 of them managed to get the visa who were senior citizens, but they only got it for Ahmedabad. They didn't get it for Delhi. So anyway, that didn't happen. She and I were really disappointed. We were looking forward to meeting them. So anyway, so this match is going on, and you know, she suddenly says, "You know, how much has our team made?" You know, and I said, "Nobody, ma. It's not India. It's Pakistan versus England today." She said, "Oh, same thing." You know, so in her mind, the boys from Pakistan is like our team. You know. After going to Lahore, she doesn't see any difference, and she says, "We have to learn from the people in Lahore how to treat guests, because the way they treat Indians will never treat Pakistanis like that. You know, how much warmth and love they have for India. You know, in India, we are absolutely inhospitable compared to them. You know, so yeah. So thanks so much, Sara, for sharing your views and your thoughts.
Same here.
Thanks for being here.
I just wanted to add something here. In 2004, India came to Pakistan, Lahore, and many Indians also visited us. I went to one of the shop of Lahore. He was trying to hosting the Indians first, and he was trying to welcome them, the shopkeeper. I was just standing in queue and waiting for my side, that he was ignoring the Pakistanis at that time, that let me discuss this time. So I just found a clever trick, and I raised my hand from at the back of the queue, and I said, "Hey, I'm an Indian too." He said, "Bhati, come forward."
Yeah, so we got the preferential treatment. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Sara. We have a question from Vishal, so I'll call Vishal here.
Hi, Baniji.
Hi.
It was great watching your movie. I congratulate you for the efforts. So I have a very serious question for you.
Right.
In 2019, Pakistani actors were banned in India, and and Indian movies were banned in Pakistan. And I am a big fan of Pakistani movies. I watch a lot of Urdu and Punjabi movies through other means, pirated means. So I just wanted to know from you, you being a filmmaker and you being involved in this space, as to what people like you could do to like revive ties between the two nations, and especially, one day we could have Pakistani movies being released in theaters here and vice versa. So can something be done, and can we in this can we people like me in this lifetime, can we have that day? Because I was currently talking to some of my friends in the UK. So they watched Maula Jat together, Indians and Pakistanis. But here the movie didn't get released, and there are a lot of people who want that movie to get released. Similarly, that goes for a lot of Indian movies also, which people in Pakistan want to watch. So can filmmakers like you do something, or can this be a reality that things get sorted out?
So all I can say is that I mean, as a filmmaker, I can make this film. I can sort of say that this is a film I believe in, and it was independently produced and made because it was a valuable story. After that, it's like kind of responses like yours is the kind of responses that I get after the film is screened in a film festival where people are able to watch it. That would hopefully change things, I mean, like, for example, like even if a film like this is screened in a theater, let's just sort of take a hypothetical situation. The person who owns the theater may want to do it. But if some negative propaganda is spread about the film, which is not even true, and the person who comes to attack the cinema owner or the property is harmed in some way, it just becomes a pointless situation, right? Because then the truth gets obfuscated. So when we were making this film, I remember having a conversation with Obro on many occasions and saying that, we took quite long to do it because it took a while to get it right. And we've been refining our edits even over the last year. And I would say to Obro that, I want this film to survive even 50 years later. I want the story to survive. So it's a bit like, as a filmmaker, I'm trying to save the seed of the story, to say that, and then after that, I mean, I can approach online platforms and I can say that, you screen the film. I mean, very often when I'm invited to show the film, I don't ask for any money. I mean, I screen it. But I mean, beyond that, I mean, the politics and the reasons for the politics are sometimes not in our control. And the reasons it's happening are very different. So one can only hope for the best. And I think more and more such stories have to be made. I mean, one of the things I was asked after one screening was that, what would you hope for after a film like this? And I said, well, what I would hope for is that when people see that a film that started like a home video grew so much, and then it was curated in so many film festivals and has even won awards, I'm hoping that people will start documenting the stories in their own families. Because another reason that this story moves people so much is because they see their own family reflected in it in some way. And if we have many such stories coming up, then the state cannot have a single narrative. The reason we are able to play one against the other is that somehow we managed to create the single narrative across the border on both sides. But if there are multiple narratives, which one is the truth, right? The truth is always, I mean, sometimes in between the lines, and sometimes depending on how you view a situation. So I think my hope is just that we should record many, many, many more such stories. And then maybe some things will change. Then the history book will not have that single narrative that my mother argued with. I mean, 50 years later, there was an acknowledgement of what she was trying to say. That, come on, don't say it was a non-violent revolution. Because there was blood, right? You don't want to acknowledge it for 50 years and then you acknowledge it after that, it says something, right? So, I mean, I don't know if this answers what you said, but these are just some of my
Oh, I
thoughts.
get your point. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with you in a way.
yeah.
Thanks, Vishal. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I'll pick up from where the Sara Arshad made her point that quote unquote Shahrukh that when you will back, tera bapu bhi roega. So definitely when we go into nostalgia, how any eye can remain dry when you see that you have been separated from your near and dear ones. There's surely to be shed tears and all this that we have talked in the my previous thing, but nostalgia is always a painful. So if we come from nostalgia to reality, I'm coming to the last shot. When your father is taken to a stadium on a wheelchair, he sees when they were playing in 1947 or 48, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There were a lot of raining and all the potholed stadiums even in England as well.
Right.
When people are saying that how anybody can play in such circumstances. So when in the last shot he's taken to a stadium that is it's a well lit. We are coming to the reality now from nostalgia.
Yeah.
So how he felt, whether he sees that under such circumstances the game is definitely coming of age. Now the people don't will have to pray for those things. They can concentrate mainly on their playing, where they can exhibit their playing capabilities.
I think I cannot actually imagine what must have been going through my father's head at that point. And I think it's only a daughter who could take him there, because it must have been very, very difficult. You know, a sort of field that he has dominated as a player. He's on the sidelines in a wheelchair. The reality is quite harsh, right? And but all I can tell you is that hockey for me, I didn't play hockey, but hockey has become the metaphor through which I have understood very complex concepts. And just talking about that game, you know, when I mean this bit that Kukuwalia comes to my father and says, "Sir, stadium nawa banata." Now this stadium is Shivaji Stadium. It is a stadium I have spent my childhood in, because my father was there every day coaching people and selecting people for the sub-junior tournaments, which he was. And it used to have natural grass. And we used to sit on the sidelines and very often throw the ball in. And then there used to be these Navy bands that used to go up and down. Then in the Commonwealth Games, this stadium got AstroTurf. And after that, they put a cage around it. So I had to get a special permission for my father to kind of go to the cage. So actually, what I was able to understand after this film is that we dominated hockey from 1924 to 1960 because the Indians reinvented that game. We were playing our natural game. And the powers that be were so fed up of the subcontinent winning it again and again, because actually then in 64, then Pakistan won, then 68, you know, again, India won. So the subcontinent had dominated the game. And actually, I'm waiting for someone to come up, and I will hand over archival material to them that I have in the interviews, that the rules of that game were changed. The surface that that game was played on was changed. And I think this is what we need to understand. That, I mean, the hockey that is played today is not the hockey that was played there. And I'm not saying that, you know, we should not move ahead, but we should also understand the reasons for which, you know, some things are changed. And we should understand the politics of that also. So,
I'm just sharing the screen that, you know, the last scene in the film when your father sits in the Shivaji Stadium, he's the new one.
Yeah. So, I mean, to take an Olympian gold medalist to the field that he's dominated, and for him to see the reality, and it is a film that I do believe sports people are not comfortable with. Because even though the film is about the gold medal, the Olympians, who are iconic heroes in both countries, are very vulnerable at the time that they are speaking. And, you know, people want to see sports and champions as these guys who've conquered and they've won and they've brought back this. But then what happens after that, right? And they lived happily ever after. Yeah, in many ways they lived happily ever after. But then this is also a reality, that there is old age and there is a passing over. And then it's the same champion, but the body is no longer there to support them. And that is a very big hurdle that they have to cross. But that's the reality of it. So this film is uncomfortable. It is saying uncomfortable things. It is difficult conversations in many, many ways, at many, many levels. So it's not a film that, you know, you can leave feeling that the threads were tied up. Because, you know, talking about nostalgia is painful because we can never revisit the past, right? And when you go back to something that you thought is what it was, it's not that, and you are also not the same. So, I mean, what happens in this film? These three friends meet only through me. So I had given them the choice of meeting through a Zoom or through a, you know, like on screen. And all three of them said they didn't want to do that because they wanted their memories. It's like, okay, we'll go this far and no further. And I think it takes an Olympian to sort of say, no, I don't want that choice, you know? So,
wow, I think all these observations, Bani, you're able to make because of your interest in psychology also. It's not just you as an artist, but it's also you as somebody with an understanding of psychology. It's already 9 o'clock, so I'm going to now, you know, close from here. But you know, I'm getting some personal requests from people who have not seen the film. That can we please see the film, and can we request Bani to share the password with us, because the password will be changed from today evening. So.
So, you know, the thing is, I can't really share the film individually, but I can keep the password as the same for another day.
Oh, great. That would be great. I think those who missed it, they can watch it now. Yeah. So
I'll keep it the same till 12 o'clock tomorrow night. And
okay.
See it.
Okay. Superb. Superb. So I think Priyanka will be very happy to hear that. Priyanka is one of Sapan's founding members, and she's very busy right now in Cambridge. She's studying. So I'm going to now hand over to Priyanka to just tell us what's happening next week in Sapan.
Thank you, Aekta, and thank you, Bani, for this marvelous talk. So I've actually shared link to the event on 27th November, and I picked from something, Bani, that you spoke about, you know, a few moments back, about how the film is an ode to the history that we do not read about. Yes. So the event on 27th November, it's titled Beyond Partitions, Shared Histories, Ways Forward. And it will feature a conversation with three authors. So we'll have Ananya Jahanara Kabir, we'll have Anam Zakaria, and we'll have Aanchal Malhotra. And we'll also be joined by more people who will present closing remarks, who've also, you know, written works. Aekta, you sharing? Thank you for sharing the screen.
Yeah, that's the poster for the next event.
Yeah, so that's just like the book jackets from.
It's taking off actually from Bani's film also. We're now going into the scholarly aspect of looking at the partition.
Yeah, so we'll have this conversation, and as we commemorate the 75 years this year, so 75 years since 1947, last year marked 50 years since 1971. So we'll be talking about not just the events of 1971 and 1947, which, because the process goes much beyond that, and what sort of has transpired in the years since that has shaped and continues to shape our interactions between not just the three nations, but also South Asian relationships at large. And Beena, who is the founder curator at Sapan, will be hosting the event. So I think we've had more updates since. So Beena, if you could also maybe share some updates about the, I think, closing remarks, because there were some confirmations later.
Yeah, Beena, please, please do the closing remarks, and you can also share you know, what your feedback about the film was.
Yeah, so I watched the film. I'm in Boston. Bani, lovely to meet you, and thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Aekta, for organizing this amazing event, and everyone else who's here and who's asked these great questions. I apologize for coming in a little late. I don't know why in my mind it was like a little bit, the time was a little bit later. I get times mixed up sometime. I think that the film, what really struck me was the way that the whole movie had been turned into this really, really excellently edited documentary. So, I mean, as a documentary filmmaker myself, who has done I did a historical documentary based on my father, but it's not a personal story about him. It's about the student movement that he led as a medical student in 1950s in Karachi, having come from Allahabad there. And I know how difficult it was to get archival material and all. And I really liked how the tools you used to tell the story, you know, through your personal telling and all that. And the other thing that really struck me was, well, one question I had, like, you know, in the last scene when you're walking away from Shah Rukh, and there's that beautiful scene of him reflected in the mirror, and you're walking away. So, like, and you're not a filmmaker. How did you do that? You set the tripod up and then you came back to get it, or how did you do that?
You know, I mean, actually, when I was approaching him, I saw that my reflection with him. I just captured it like that. I didn't set it up. I was just walking with the camera backwards.
Oh, you're just walking with the camera back. So you could, oh my gosh, wow, that's so creative. That's really wonderful. Yeah. And I was also wondering, like, all the scenes where you are talking, or where like in the beginning, when you're, you know, after your father's passed away, and, you know, it's very clear, anybody who knows about South Asia knows that this is the scene of a passing away, because we have the similar, you know, the white chadars and people, you know, it's the same kind of a thing. And the empty chair, and, you know, like, we knew immediately that had happened. So another thing I wanted to say, I think your storytelling is so effective, because, you know, you're telling about how you go to Lahore, you're trying to, you keep the suspense. You start, actually, it's like a suspense. It's almost like a suspense thriller, because the way it starts is like a suspense thriller of what's going to happen next, what's going to happen next. And when you go to Lahore, we're like, has she got through to Shah Rukh? Has she not? And you don't tell us until you're back with your father. And then suddenly, oh my God, she did. So there was this great sense of disappointment that she's going back and she hasn't mentioned him, and then she must not have got through to him. And you did. And then I think the authenticity also comes from things like when you're sitting there with the camera running and you're meeting Shah Rukh's family, and they come in, and you just and you're saying, I'm just waiting for him. I'm just waiting for him to come. He's the star of my show. And as a documentary, I think that is the beauty of documentary. You don't know what's going to unfold. What unfolds, what your camera is able to capture, then you can once you have all your footage, then you can you know, weave your story based on what you have. But until you have it, you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know how somebody's going to react. And of course, the choice is on you, what you choose to keep in, what you choose to leave out. I mean, I'm sure there's hundreds of hours of footage that you haven't used.
Well, I have actually 70 hours of footage altogether. That this was culled out. And, you know, for the story and the structure of the story, I would say it was a very collaborative effort between me and Obro. So I would give him a lot of credit for some of the nuances of the filmmaking. Because when I had gone to Obro was my third editor, actually. So I had, you know, done a certain journey with the first editor. We'd broken through, and I felt the story needed to go further. And I also realized that there was some footage that was not there, like archival footage, because I had very clearly experienced the story in layers. And then I would sometimes be giving the editors a very tough, sort of tall order by saying, I want all these. But so, I mean, I took my film back, then I went to the second one, and then finally I came to Obro. So by the time I reached Obro, he knew what he should not do in the film, what will not work. And he knew that I was very clear about what I wanted to achieve. And I told Obro that, you know, the story is mine and I'm the director, but a lot of the filming sophistication and nuances can only be brought out by a very sophisticated editor now. So this much I knew that, you know, because there was so much amateur footage, I wanted to keep even the whole film treatment like rushes, not like a very finished product, you know, so that fits in with the style. And there are bits you'll see that I come in front of the camera. I was always keeping the back end in. I wanted to keep the chaos in, to kind of realize that, you know, this is how you experience truth. It's never really in a studio, is never really kind of set up. You suddenly someone says something and, you know, it throws you, it takes you somewhere else. And the other thing I did, maybe because of inexperience, was that I was taking no retakes. I mean, I felt in the
Yeah,
spirit
in
of
documentary you don't, right? Yeah.
But
I mean, in a classic documentary, you don't. People have changed the genre. It's become very different now. There's all feature documentaries and all that. But yeah, I'm so glad you did not do that,
So
because
I
that's
think
what
helped a lot. That helped a
Yes.
lot because it was very, very authentic. So
Yes.
it guided us in terms of how we have to structure and shape it in terms of
Yes.
yeah.
Like, so where I was starting was like when you're sitting there and talking to the camera, or you're sitting and talking to, so you set up the camera on a tripod and it was just you, or you had somebody else filming?
I'll tell you what happened in that shot. It's very interesting, is that my father had passed away and I was not able to actually touch the footage for about 2 years after that, because I used to kind of find it very difficult, because film is just such a real medium.
Yes.
So I came back to it after 2 years, and then I was back in the home. Fortunately, that home had not been demolished, because now it has been since then. And I had Sudhir, who's helped me do some of the cinematography. I said, I need to, I knew that I wanted to depict my father's death. So I said, he said, how would you want to do it? And I said, it's a feeling of emptiness that I want to convey. So what had happened after my father passed away is that room that he used to be in, I had actually rearranged the furniture and changed the room completely in order to be able to deal with that space. And then after 2 years, when I wanted to film this, I actually rearranged it exactly the way it used to be when he was there. So in a sense, that one was recapturing
Recreated,
what it was.
right.
And then so I didn't prepare for it after that. And as you can imagine, it was, I was feeling quite overcome with emotion, just, when it was. And he said, okay, Bani, now what do you want to do? And he said, can you shoot what you would have done? Because when I came after my father passed away, of course, the film was the last thing on my mind.
Yes.
He said, if you had got the news and you came to Delhi, and what would you have done? So you just do that. So I hadn't prepared for it. I took the camera from his hand. I walked out of the house and I came in and I did that movement that I did.
Right.
So he said, what are you doing? He saw the footage and he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking for my father. And then I'm not believing that he's not there. And then I'm coming back, and those chairs used to be exactly like that. I used to sit on this chair and he said, and I said, then the film starts from there. So what he did was that he literally took my movement and he shot it again with a very steady hand, but he shot that. And then he could see that I was feeling quite overwhelmed with an emotion that I couldn't quite understand. So he smiled and he said, okay, now sit down in that chair that you used to sit in when your father was there. And I'm putting the camera on and I'm going to record you. So I was not recording it for the film. Otherwise, I would have put a mic on.
Right.
I was just recording my emotions.
Yes.
So in a sense, it was not set up. It was not rehearsed. I was just doing it for us. And this is where, I often used to tell Obro that you read my mind. So I'd given Obro all the footage, but I was very shy about this footage because it was so personal, and I had actually at one point when I was talking to Sudhir, I started crying, because it was like my father was there in the chair next to me. And Obro began the film with that.
Yes.
So in a sense, I would have liked to do that, but I was just so shy about it, So there it used to become sometime. Like I remember even that photograph. You see, my sister-in-law was taking photographs when my father passed away. She's a very, very well-known street photographer. I wasn't very comfortable about it. But it's like, as I said, the story was recording itself. So there was no camera on when my father had passed away, but she was taking the most incredible photographs, which were capturing the mood in a way that maybe even a film wouldn't have been able to, a video.
Yeah, because I was wondering about that, because this was all, I think what you're saying is that this is all kind of the way it came together. It's very organic.
Yes.
And it was kind of like, it was like you said, the film kind of made itself in a way.
It really
because normally people are not taking photographs at a funeral. No. And the fact that your sister-in-law is a street photographer who took these incredible photographs, and then they were interspersed with that empty house and the thing. So so that actually threw me a little bit, because I was like, how did this happen? Because I was one. But so okay, so thank you.
It was very fascinating because she made a book with those photographs, and it took me 2 years to see her little book. And she said, you have to see this because it is my ode to your father. He celebrated his life during that time. It's a beautiful.
Yes. And I thought that your comment about how you came to know about his Olympian spirit, about the champion, like after his stroke, that's when you really learned about his strength. And I thought that was so, I thought the script was really beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I think one thing that, you know, like how you bring things out, and the dedication at the end really moved me. That is dedicated to Punjab and Bengal, because those are the two that were really affected. And I know that we've gone over time, but I mean, I could talk to you for, you know, for a lot longer about more of the specifics of the technicalities of the film that I noticed.
I would love to, Beena, take this discussion further, because for me, this film is an opportunity to start new conversations on the ground. And it's a bit like from real life, it went into the film, and I wanted to come back into real life and be able to enable conversations, you know, in a different way. So I would love to work with you in any way that you feel.
Definitely, you're most welcome. So Sapan, as Aekta must have introduced in the beginning, it's a collaborative, it's a coalition, and one of our mentors and one of our advisors is in fact Salima Hashmi. So I was so happy to see her involvement in this. And also, by the way, today is Fair Saab's Barsi. Today is Fair Saab's Barsi.
Look at the coincidences, you know.
Yes. So it's kind of like, in a way, and by the way, this film is very close to me personally, because my parents were close. My father passed away, like I mentioned, but he was very close to Faiz Saab. And field hockey, he started with field. So I just loved the field hockey, the old field hockey, because my father was a field hockey player back in Allahabad, and his brother was. And my mamu, who just recently passed away at 96, he was. And my mamu and chacha were both journalists. And it is because of them meeting in Karachi as sports reporters that my parents met later, like after my chacha had passed away. But so that field hockey, and that point is so important about how the field hockey rules were changed and how the way it's played was changed. So it took the game away from us, really.
Yeah, that's a different film. I had started out wanting to make that film, but this story was so powerful that got, you know, that's a different film. I've got so much footage for that, but I hope to help someone else make it, you know.
Yeah. So I think so we'd love to have you. So like in the chat, we've put some links. One is for our Milne Do petition, online petition. It is calling to let people ease visa restrictions, let people meet, you know, let South Asia be like the EU or like USA, Canada. We need to think of it as a region. And I saw that Namrata Sharma from Nepal is here, and she's like, Nepal was never partitioned in that way. But you know, she is learning so much because she's been part of Sapan since for several months now, and just I think we're all learning from each other. We have a founding charter that is on our homepage, and I'm sure Priyanka's already put it. Priyanka thinks like, you know, like we were talking about, like we need to get people to write about this discussion. And Priyanka, Aekta, and I thought of it at the same time that Sara and Deeksha, you know, we must ask them to write about this because their stories, what they told, was so powerful. So I think, I'll just and oh yes, and I wanted to say that just pass on a message from Jayashree Hart in California, who watched the film. She couldn't join because it's very early morning then. She was also she sent a message yesterday saying thank you so much for this gift of this film, and she actually made a little contribution to us, our only contribution. So if anybody else wants to contribute, she contributed $25, which was really lovely. We really appreciate that, because we haven't really started a donation drive for Sapan at all, but we would love people who like our work to donate something, so that we can, you know, start to pay for these Zoom calls and the website, and start to pay our writers and editors and all that. And we'd love to have you write, Bani, if you would like to write your personal story, you know, write about it, write about this process. I think that would be lovely as well, because we launched this Sapan News Network syndicated feature service. So we, you know, welcome anybody who'd like to write to please do pitch us and write. And so, yeah, thank you, Aekta and Priyanka and Neel. I'm so glad you asked those questions. Lovely to see Arusha, Manaz, and other friends. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Bani, for being part of this, our first film club screening. And if I request everybody to please turn on your camera so that we can take a selfie before we close the session.
Ekta, and while you're doing that, I just want to while people are doing that, I just want to say so much happening with film, and I'm really glad to see what they say about trauma. The first generation is silent, and the second generation is processing, and it's the third generation, like like after that many decades, who starts to tell these stories. I think your call to ask people to record their personal stories and their, like Ekta, the story that you told, I'm sure if she has photographs and stuff, and at least we could write about it, if not make a film. I think they need to be these stories need to be written about and documented and put out as much as possible into the public narrative. And I hope that Sapan can provide a platform to bring these stories together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.